This is the Podcast Lab. Subscribe now and never miss an episode.
Deep dive. This time, it's all about time management. And you've sent in some really cool stuff, actually.
Yeah.
We've got videos from leadership experts like Dr. Miles Monroe, some articles on productivity, and even, get this, some Warren Buffett.
Oh, wow.
So we've got like motivational stuff, tips and tricks, even like reflections on how these big, titans of industry approach time.
I love it.
So what we're gonna do is distill the most valuable, time management wisdom from all these sources, right?
Yeah.
So we'll be exploring some pretty big questions like, is there a right way to spend time? Can we really control it when it feels like it just slips away?
All the time.
And how to, high achievers, how do they structure their days? We're going to pack all of this and more. And the goal is to help you understand not just what works, but why it works.
Okay.
And how you can use it in your own life.
Love it.
Now, I'm really excited to have our expert here to help us kind of connect the dots between all these different sources and perspectives.
Happy to be here.
One thing that I noticed going through all this material is how many of them emphasize that, time is a limited resource. It sounds obvious,
Yeah.
but I think we forget that we're constantly spending time, whether we realize it or not.
Yeah. No, for sure.
So what are your thoughts on that?
It's interesting. It's like Dr. Monroe, he talks about this a lot. In his message, he calls time, get this, the currency we use to buy our lives.
Wow.
Right. It's a powerful analogy because it forces us to think about every moment as an investment. Are we spending it wisely, or are we wasting it?
Speaking of wasting time, that reminds me of last week I kind of went down this pro-Kabaddi rabbit hole.
Pro-Kabaddi?
Yeah, have you seen this?
I haven't. No.
Oh, it's so cool. But I probably didn't get the best, return on investment there. But it did make me think about, we were talking about investments, it made me think about Warren Buffett and how he always talks about focusing on long-term value, not short-term gains. Could we maybe apply that kind of thinking to time management?
Absolutely. I mean, it's all about understanding that time, like money, can be invested wisely or squandered. And Buffett's 5-25 rule, where he recommends focusing on your top 5 goals and ignoring everything else, that's a perfect example. It's about being really choosy and not getting sidetracked by things that might seem appealing in the moment, but ultimately don't really matter.
I like that. So how do we figure out what those top 5 goals or investments should be when it comes to our time? Is it all about prioritization?
Prioritization is huge. I mean, several of our sources touch on that. Dr. Monroe, he talks about the need for a written plan, setting priorities based on your purpose, and then actually protecting those priorities, which can be tough.
Yeah, because it's so easy to get, swept up in the day-to-day and, feel like you're just constantly reacting instead of being proactive.
Right, exactly.
There's that quote, isn't there? If you don't prioritize your life, someone else will.
Oh, that's a good one. It is a good one. And that's where purpose comes in. We have Mahatria Ra. He talks about putting first things first, focusing on what matters most, before we get bogged down with all the little things that, they feel urgent but aren't really important.
So it's like identifying those big things, those big rocks.
Yeah.
The core values.
Yeah.
Your long-term goals, and then making sure that those get, the prime real estate in your schedule.
Exactly. And then, you've got to protect that time.
Even with good intentions,
Yeah.
though. I get sidetracked. Life throws a lot at us.
Yeah.
So how do we stay on track when those distractions come up?
Yeah.
Because they always do.
That's where systems can be super helpful, even if you don't have ADHD. Dr. Tracy Marks, she points out that relying on your memory alone in this world, it's a recipe for disaster. External systems like planners, calendars, those become extensions of your memory,
Right.
They free up mental space for focus and prevent those, oh, shoot, I forgot moments.
That's like a backup generator for your brain.
Yeah, exactly.
I like that. Even with a planner, I struggle with overcommitting sometimes. I hate saying no to people because I don't want to disappoint them or whatever. But I've noticed this theme in a lot of these sources about the power of saying no. Why is that so important?
It's counterintuitive, but saying no strategically actually frees up your time and energy to focus on what truly matters. Think of it this way. If you say yes to every request, you spread yourself thin and end up doing a mediocre job on everything. By saying no to some things, you create space to say a more emphatic yes to the things that really align with your goals and values.
So it's about being more selective. So you can be more effective in the areas that really matter.
Right. It's about making choices. And it can be hard at first, but it gets easier with practice.
Okay,
Yeah.
that makes sense. Even when we're good at saying no, there are still, so many demands on our time.
Right.
So what are some practical, techniques for managing all that and staying productive?
Well, there are a lot of different time management techniques out there. We've got things like the Pomodoro technique, which is great for focused work, time blocking, where you visualize your day and allocate specific time for tasks, the Eisenhower matrix, where you prioritize tasks based on urgency and importance, and even the ABCDE method, where you break down tasks into manageable steps.
It's a lot.
It is. It's like a buffet of productivity strategies.
So how do you figure out which technique or combination of techniques will work best for you?
Experimentation is key. There's no one-size-fits-all solution. You've got to try different things and see what resonates with your work style and preferences. Some people love the structure of time blocking, while others prefer the flexibility of the Pomodoro technique.
Right. So it's not about finding the perfect system, but finding what works for you.
Exactly. It's about personalization.
But even with the best techniques, I think we all struggle with distractions sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
What are some strategies for, minimizing those and staying focused?
One of the most effective strategies is to create a distraction-free environment. So that might mean turning off notifications, putting your phone on silent, or even using a website blocker to keep you off social media.
I'm so guilty of those social media rabbit holes.
I think we all are to some extent.
Sometimes it's not even external. It's like that urge to multitask.
Oh, yeah. The multitasking myth.
Yeah, I want to jump between different tasks.
But that's where the concept of single tasking comes in. Dr. Monroe and Motivation Radio, they both emphasize choosing one task and giving it your full attention until it's done. It sounds counterintuitive in our multitasking culture, but research shows that single tasking actually leads to greater productivity and higher quality work.
Because how can you do your best work if you're constantly switching gears? It's like trying to write a novel and compose a symphony at the same time.
Right. And it's not just about productivity. Single tasking helps you be more present and engaged in what you're doing, which can lead to more satisfaction and fulfillment.
Well, absolutely. Well, we've covered a lot of ground already, and I feel like there's so much more to explore. So let's take a pause here. We'll come back for part 2 of your deep dive. We'll dive deeper into the dangers of distraction, the importance of breaks, and even the concept of time investment. So stay tuned.
Welcome back to your deep dive, all about, you guessed it, time management.
It's amazing how these ideas, they seem so simple, right? But they can really make a big difference in how we actually live our lives.
Totally. They really can.
Before the break, we were talking about how important it is to think of time as an investment and to be, intentional with how we use it.
Right.
But what are some of the biggest things that get in the way? What are the roadblocks to managing time well?
Oh, man. Distractions. Distractions.
Yeah.
They're everywhere, especially now.
It's they're everywhere.
Constantly, and they can be so sneaky,
Yeah, what are some examples?
It's like that urge to check social media every 5 seconds. Or that fear of missing out.
Oh, yeah, FOMO.
That keeps us glued to our phones, It's like they're these little time thieves just lurking around every corner.
Oh, totally. I catch myself scrolling through social media, and then, an hour's gone. Poof.
I know. It's like our brains are just wired for distraction these days.
They are. So what do we do?
Well, that's where this whole single tasking thing comes in.
Single tasking.
Yeah. A lot of these sources, like Dr. Monroe, Motivation Radio, they talk about this a lot.
Okay.
And it's basically about choosing one task and just laser focus until it's done.
Okay, so just one thing at a time.
One thing. Sounds kind of crazy in our multitasking culture.
Right.
But all the research shows single tasking, it actually makes you more productive and the work is better.
Yeah, because how can you do good work when you're just all over the place?
Exactly.
It's like trying to write a novel and compose a symphony, all at the same time.
Yeah, and learn to juggle.
Right. It's just too much.
Just not gonna work.
Yeah.
And you end up wasting so much time and energy switching back and forth between things.
Yeah, it's like that saying, if you chase 2 rabbits, you'll catch neither.
Exactly.
That reminds me of the Warren Buffett rule, the 5-25 rule, where it's you focus on your top 5 goals and ignore the rest.
Oh, yeah, that's a great example. That really forces you to prioritize,
Yeah.
and make some tough choices.
I gotta decide.
Yeah, you have to.
Yeah.
And it's not just for business goals.
Yeah.
You can use it for anything. Feeling overwhelmed with personal stuff. Figure out your top 5 priorities, and anything that doesn't fit in those, politely decline.
I like that. So you're in control.
You are.
But even when you're clear about what your priorities are, there are still times when you get stuck or procrastinate.
Oh, for sure. Procrastination. It's a universal struggle.
What can we do about that?
It usually comes from fear, or overwhelm.
Or like wanting things to be perfect.
Oh, yeah. Perfectionism is a big one. The first step is to figure out why you're procrastinating.
Right. So why am I doing this?
Yeah, exactly. Are you afraid of failing? Does the task just feel way too big and scary?
Okay.
Once you know why, then you can start finding ways to deal with it.
That makes sense. I know I've put things off because they just seem so overwhelming.
Oh, yeah.
Like paralysis by analysis, right?
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah.
So what do you do when that happens?
I don't know.
Break it down.
Break it down.
Break it down into smaller steps instead of looking at the whole project, which can feel impossible.
Right.
Focus on one little piece at a time.
Okay.
It makes it feel less scary.
Right. Less intimidating.
And you get that sense of accomplishment as you check things off your list.
Like progress.
Yeah.
I'm making progress.
Exactly. And this ties back into having systems, right?
Yeah.
A to-do list, a calendar.
Right. Whatever works for you.
Yeah, it's about creating structure and clarity.
It's like having that support.
And it's not just external systems. It's also about the internal stuff.
The internal stuff. What do you mean by that?
Self-discipline, focus.
Okay, so it's like the tools
Yeah.
and then like your mindset.
Exactly. It's got to be both.
Both.
Yeah.
But even with the best systems and the best mindset, sometimes you just need a break, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, a lot of these sources actually say that breaks can make you more productive.
It's true.
Can you explain how that works? Because it seems counterintuitive.
Yeah, it does. Our brains, they're not meant to focus for hours and hours nonstop.
Right.
We need time to rest,
Charge.
process information. Dr. Marks, she compares it to laundry. If you try to do all your laundry at once, it feels overwhelming, right?
Oh, yeah.
But if you break it down into smaller loads with breaks in between,
Yeah.
it feels way more manageable.
Right.
It's the same with work.
It's like running a marathon and not stopping.
Yeah, you hit a wall eventually. And the breaks don't have to be big.
No.
Sometimes just stepping away from your desk for 5 minutes can make a huge difference.
Just to like clear your head.
Exactly. And it's not just physical breaks that matter. Mental and emotional breaks are important too. Put your phone away, get out in nature,
Yeah. Yeah.
do some mindfulness exercises. Those all help to prevent burnout.
And this goes back to that idea from Motivation Radio, right?
Yeah.
Moderation in all things.
Yes. Even when you're striving for success, if you neglect your health, your relationships, it all backfires eventually.
It does.
Yeah.
So how can we like bring more balance into how we manage our time? It's so easy to get caught up in the like craziness of everyday life.
It is. One way is to pay attention to your energy levels throughout the day.
Okay.
So instead of trying to push through when you're feeling drained,
Right.
schedule breaks for those times. Work with your natural rhythms, not against them.
Okay. So like listen to your body.
Exactly.
But how do you remember to do that? It's so easy to forget.
Well, that's where reflection comes in. Take some time each day to think about your values, your priorities.
No, that's a few minutes.
Yeah, even just a few minutes. Write it down. How are you spending your time?
Okay.
Is it lining up with what's truly important to you?
So it's like a check-in
Yeah, a check-in with yourself.
to make sure you're on track.
Because it's so easy to get off track.
It is.
You get swept away by other people's priorities and forget about your own.
So we've got to like be captains of our own ships.
Exactly. You're the captain.
Okay. I'm ready to steer.
Awesome. Because we've got a lot more to cover.
We do.
Yeah, there's so much more to this time management thing than meets the eye.
Okay. I'm intrigued.
I knew you would be. So let's take a little pause here.
Okay.
And when we come back, we'll explore how to apply all of this to teams and organizations.
Oh, that'll be interesting.
Yeah, how do you create a whole culture of time awesomeness? And then we'll dive even deeper into this idea of legacy. Stay tuned.
That idea of reflecting on your values, it's really stuck with me.
It's powerful stuff, isn't it?
It is. And it kind of brings us back to that balance thing, right? Like how to bring more balance into our lives.
Right, exactly.
It's not just about squeezing every last, drop of productivity out of every single minute.
It's about making choices.
Yeah.
About how you spend your time and energy.
No, we've talked about a lot of different techniques and stuff.
Yeah.
Pomodoro technique, time blocking, Eisenhower matrix.
It's a lot to take in.
It's like a whole like productivity toolbox.
It is.
What about you? Out of all of those, which one really speaks to you?
That's a tough one. They all have their strengths. But if I had to pick just one, I think it would be the ABCDE method.
The ABCGE method. Okay, tell me more.
It forces you to like break things down
Right.
into smaller steps, prioritize based on importance, and then decide what to delegate or just get rid of completely.
It sounds very, systematic.
It is. It's all about being strategic.
I like it. It reminds me of that Warren Buffett quote, the difference between successful people and really successful people. Is that really successful people say no to almost everything?
Oh, that's a good one. That's so true.
Yeah. So the ABCDE method is like that in action.
Exactly. It's about being ruthless with your time.
Ruthless. So how do we decide, though, what's truly essential? How do we cut through all the noise and figure out what really matters?
Well, it comes back to your values, right? A lot of these sources talk about that.
Yeah.
Dr. Monroe, he talks about setting priorities based on your overall plan.
Your purpose.
Yeah, your purpose. And Motivation Radio, they emphasize defining your goals and then ranking them.
So first, you got to figure out your why.
Exactly. If you don't have that, you're just drifting.
Like a ship without a rudder.
Yeah, you're just going to get tossed around by whatever comes your way.
And that's where systems come in, right?
Systems are key. Planners, boundaries, even just designing your environment to minimize distractions.
Oh, that's a good one.
Right. Remember what Dr. Mark said about out of sight, out of mind? A good system, it's like an external brain.
It's like offloading some of that mental work.
Exactly. It frees up your mind to focus on the important stuff.
Now, we've been talking a lot about individual time management, but what about teams, organizations? Can we apply these principles on a larger scale?
Absolutely. Imagine a workplace where everyone's on the same page, using these techniques, taking breaks.
Oh, that would be amazing.
Right. The productivity, the well-being.
It would be like a whole different world.
It would. And it starts with leadership.
Okay, so the leaders have to set the example.
They do. They need to model these behaviors, prioritize effectively, encourage breaks, create a culture of focus.
And what are some things leaders can do to make that happen?
Communication is huge. They need to be clear about goals and priorities, make sure everyone understands how their work contributes to the bigger picture, and they need to provide the right tools and training.
So it's about empowerment.
Exactly. Giving people the skills and the support they need to manage their time effectively.
And that brings us to legacy, right? Like the impact we make.
That's the ultimate goal, isn't it? Dr. Monroe talks about creating something that will outlive you.
Something that matters.
Something that makes a difference.
So it's not just about checking things off a to-do list.
It's about using your time to create something meaningful.
And it's been amazing diving deep into all these ideas with you.
It has been fun.
And I hope everyone listening has found it helpful and inspiring.
Me too.
But before we go, I want to leave you with one last thought. It's inspired by Warren Buffett. He once said, if you could only focus on the 3 most important things in your life right now, what would they be? Think about that. How can you structure your time to make sure those things get the attention they deserve? Remember, time is the most valuable investment you'll ever make. So invest it wisely and keep diving deep.